Hey y'all, I am Jess and this is Roots and Refuge Farm. Today I want to talk to you guys about that awkward place of waiting for your farm dream to come true and what you can do to turn that waiting room into a classroom. I remember the time of desperately longing for a farm very well. And it wasn't that long ago for me. We've only had our homestead for about 5 years. And my reason for making this video today is I remember that feeling of like, I just want to do something, where you have the dream in your heart, you know you want a homesteading lifestyle, but the circumstances are not lining up yet for whatever reason. Maybe you've got your property already, or maybe you're just looking for it, or maybe it's completely out of reach and it's not even something that you can afford to do yet. I understand there are a lot of things that have to come together in order to make this a reality. And the meantime can be such an excruciating place because you just want to act on that desire of your heart. I'm a big believer that if you have a dream for something, that you should partner with it in whatever way possible. And a lot of times that doesn't mean making it happen. Sometimes the best thing you can do for your dream is wait on it to happen in the right time. With that said, I believe that we can partner with our dreams wherever we are, in different measures. I love to learn. I'm a researcher. I love to read and watch other people's mistakes and successes and just kind of hypothesize about how I'm going to do something whenever I get a chance. Now, a lot of times whenever my chance comes, I still mess up. Because a lot of things you just have to learn experientially. However, I think there are a lot of skills that you can gain in your waiting room that turn that season of your life into part of your homestead journey. A lot of the things that I use, the knowledge that I use, the tools that I use, and the skills that I use now in my homestead life, I actually gained before I had ever even had any hands-on experience with any of this. So today I want to share with you some skills that you can learn in the waiting. These are either skills that I did learn myself or skills that I wish I had learned. And all of these are things that you can do no matter what your current situation is. If you're living in a suburban setting, if you're living in an apartment in the city, these are things that you can grab hold of, that you can practice, that you can learn, and that will benefit you as soon as your time comes to actually get to live out your homestead dream. Now, the term homesteader, it gets used pretty loosely, and there are all different degrees of what that looks like for people. For instance, a lot of people who consider themselves modern homesteaders, they have no desire to be off-grid, they have no desire to have complete sustainability. However, they're making efforts to be more sustainable, to grow their own food, to live more naturally and less dependent. I think the first step of really grasping what kind of skills that you're going to need is really nailing down what your goal is. I'm a big believer in dreaming big and just imagining what you want your life to look like, what you want things to be. Now, as long as you can use that as a tool to guide your steps in the present instead of becoming discontent and fearful and all of those things might never happen, but rather use it as what do I need to do next to partner with that dream. I think that is a really healthy thing, to just dream about what your life could be. Now, no matter if your dream is to have a 50-acre fully sustainable ranch or a modern homestead on an acre in town, it's probably pretty centered around growing your own food. We're gonna run up to the kitchen in just a minute and talk a little bit about food, but first I want to take you for a short walk down the road from my house and talk to you about foraging. All of these roadsides are covered with wild blackberries, elderberry bushes. The woods out here have persimmon trees growing. Now, we own, a couple acres of woods right here. We've made friends with our neighbors across the street that let us pick blackberries on their property, but there was a time that I didn't have any property out in the country. But through making relationships with people who did, I was given permission to go forage on their property. We had friends that had 40 acres, and every year we would go pick gallons and gallons of blackberries. It was my one lifeline to my dream of sustainability. I loved going and picking blackberries, going home and making jam and cobblers and freezing them for smoothies, because it just made me feel like, yes, I'm actually getting to do something. Learning to forage is a huge part of sustainability and homesteading, and it's something that you can absolutely do do while you live in town. Now, you'll hear me talk a lot about relational type stuff. Make a friend, talk to a neighbor. A big part of homesteading is community. And if you're currently not in the place of having a homestead, that doesn't cut you off from being able to start tying yourself into these communities wherever it is that you're looking to homestead. Right now, in the modern day of the internet, with platforms like YouTube and Instagram, different Facebook groups, there are a lot of opportunities to connect with other people who are doing what you want to do. Now, are you going to be able to meet a person and just immediately say, hey, can I come scrounge your land for wild berries? Probably not. It's probably going to take building some relationship. So I want to encourage you that if that's not comfortable for you, start looking at your mindset and seeing if that's something that you can get comfortable with. Making friends who are fellow homesteaders is just a big part of this life. When I first started this, I didn't have very many friends locally who were doing what we do. And so I turned to the internet. I ended up making a lot of friends through Instagram that were homesteaders, and through that, we traded seeds. I had people send me hatching eggs. We met up whenever we were in each other's areas, and whereas I was lacking the neighbor that I could go borrow a cup of sugar from, I had friends all over the United States that I was able to share information with, that I was able to call. When I learned how to pressure can, I was on the phone with my friend Hannah, like panicking, saying, am I doing this right? Am I doing this right? She lives in Ohio. I met her on Instagram. I've made these friendships through the internet, and I just want to encourage you that that is a big thing that you can do in the waiting. Begin making relationships that can be a support system for you whenever you actually put your hand to the plow on your farm. And to return to my original point there, learn to forage. You can borrow books from the library about herbalism, about wild edibles, and make friends and talk to people. A lot of times people don't mind if you come pick the blackberries off their roadside. You just have to ask. My neighbor that lets me pick blackberries, a lot of times I'll take them a jar of the jam that I make. Some sort of thank you for allowing me access to their space. They're not using those blackberries. They don't care anything about them, but it's just honoring the fact that they're allowing me to use them. And if you go ahead now and you learn the information of what you're looking for, even if you don't use that a lot before you have your farm, you'll be able to use it as soon as you get here. Because I had been foraging for years before we got our property, the first time after we closed, we walked our land and I was like, wow, there's an elderberry tree. Wow, there are wild blackberries. There's a persimmon tree. And I recognized those things because those were things that I had already become accustomed with before I ever had my farm. Another skill that you can learn in the waiting is repurposing materials. You can just start shifting your mindset even while you still live in town, that just because something is used or might not necessarily traditionally be what you would use in a project, it doesn't mean that it's worthless. Behind me is a coop that we made out of a dog kennel someone was getting rid of that we sided in pallet wood. It cost us nothing to build, and it was all found materials that we were able to get for free. Since then, we have built so much on our farm with repurposed materials. We've got a goat barn that's made out of an old privacy fence, all the pickets. We've got other coops made out of reclaimed materials like this. Our garden beds are all made out of reclaimed tin and then cedar trimmings from a local mill we were able to get really cheap. If you don't have basic carpentry skills, that is something that you can start working on in your garage in town. You don't have to wait until you have a farm to learn how to use basic power tools and start putting stuff together. Challenge yourself. If you're not in a place to build a chicken coop, build a coffee table. Learn how to put wood together. Learn how to build basic things, because those skills are skills that you're going to need, and you can begin honing those skills where you are. And what it boils down to is, if you're yearning desperately for a homestead, building that coffee table might not seem like a really big deal, but if in your mind you understand that what you're doing is working towards your dream, it does wonders as far as having patience and hope that your dream isn't out of reach. One homesteading skill that you can't go wrong investing your time and energy in honing is gardening. Wherever you are, learn to grow something. And I thought, if people living in situations like this can make an effort to grow, surely most people can. Now, it doesn't take a lot to grow a few containers of something. You can grow plants in 5-gallon buckets. You can grow them in repurposed containers. You can build a little 4x4 foot raised garden bed wherever you are. Even if you don't have the capacity to grow the garden that you're envisioning or the garden of your dreams, grow something. You improve your skills massively by getting some hands-on experience in growing stuff. Now, before we moved out here, where I actually began some really large gardening efforts, we lived in town and I turned my flower beds into gardens. I grew peas and beans and tomato plants. I lined my whole front porch with pots. You can buy grow pots online for really cheap. Get some soil and plant some plants. Don't blow it off because you feel like your efforts might be too small. So much of gardening is learned in hands-on experience. You can read, which you should. You can visit other people's gardens, which you should. But until you put your hand to actually growing food, you're not going to have the feel for it. Now, I don't have a problem with planting my garden beds overcrowded or not giving them the space and light and water requirements that they need. And that, honestly, that didn't come by reading. I mean, a little bit of it did, but my biggest teacher in that was experience. I know what those plants need now because I've grown them before. You can get a leg up on your big homestead garden by simply growing these things one time in town, and then you have more of a feel of what those plants need. Now, I'm of the belief that so much of the preparation that happens for your homestead dream to come true happens in the kitchen. Because no matter what your current situation, you're probably in a position to start doing a lot of the household things that will be really important once you start your homestead. The first skill that really comes into play is learning to cook from scratch. Because essentially what your goal is in growing your own food is to become less dependent on the grocery store. But you can't do that if you are completely dependent on convenience foods to feed yourself and your family. Now, my journey of learning to cook from scratch, it was a baby step kind of thing. Honestly, I dove off on the deep end, tried to do too much at once, got burnt out, and kind of had to rein it back in and just start learning new skills and implementing them where I could. There's so many things that you can learn to do to make yourself more sustainable. Now, I suggest thinking about what it is that you want to grow. Once you really have in your mind what it is that you're going to grow, start learning how to cook those things, even if it means going and buying the ingredients. One of the first things that I learned to make whenever I was trying to switch over to real foods and start cooking more whole foods, and really was just dreaming of having a farm, was I started to make broth. You know, we would eat chickens, roasted chickens, or even buy rotisserie chickens at the store, and then we would just throw the carcasses away. But you can boil those and make bone broth, and in that you're using all the parts of your food. You're not wasting anything, and you're replacing, whereas you might buy canned or boxed broths which are full of sodium, going through the list of what you normally eat and making the choice to switch over to the whole food alternatives is a great place to start if you have the desire to one day grow your own food. For instance, completely nixing out things like instant mashed potatoes or frozen meals where everything's all mixed together. Things where you can make a real food alternative fairly easy. And truly, when it's all said and done, this can save you a lot of money. I guess this could be considered part of learning to cook from scratch, but I don't know. I kind of think yeast stands alone. Learn how to work with yeast. These days, I keep a big jar of yeast in my freezer. I buy it bulk and go through it. But for a long time, yeast scared me. I just thought it was something that was very advanced as far as cooking, to be able to make your own bread, but it's not. Now, I don't always make my family's bread, but I can. It's just good to have these skills, even if you're not going to be doing them all the time. At least you have the option. And truly, making your own bread is so much cheaper than buying it at the store. You can make a loaf of sandwich bread very affordably, and it's really not that hard if you get into the routine of starting your dough in the morning and baking your bread throughout the day. Yeast is something that is not scary. You just have to take the plunge, and this is definitely on my list of must-learn homesteading skills, and there's no reason why you can't do it before you actually have your farm. Something else you can do in your kitchen before you have your farm is take up fermentation. fermented foods are so good for you. It is a great way to use up extra stuff out of your garden. Things like kombucha are a great alternative to sugary carbonated beverages, and it's all something that you can learn to do now. It's something that can benefit your diet now, and they're skills that are great to have once you move onto your farm and you do have a garden producing a lot of stuff. It's nice to know how to make these things. Things like homemade sauerkraut, fermented pickles, fermented hot sauces. You can ferment all kinds of stuff and it's delicious. It doesn't take a lot of extra tools. It doesn't take a lot of extra skill. It's something you can definitely start right now. If you're planning on getting into dairy animals at some point, if that's something that you desire to do, to have a cow or dairy goats, right now you can start learning how to use excess milk. You don't have to wait until you have animals to learn how to make yogurt at home, or to learn how to make butter, to learn how to make cheeses. I recently did a video showing how we make fresh mozzarella from our goat's milk. It's a great way to use up extra milk, but I went ahead and did the experiment of using a gallon of cheap cow's milk that I bought from the store, and it worked just fine. I'll link that video below, but I want to encourage you that if having dairy animals is something that you'd like to do in the future, learn how to use that milk now. If yogurt is something that you're already purchasing and using, if it's something that you feed your kids, if it's something you eat yourself, learn how to make it from scratch. And again, once you've mastered the skill, if you want to go back to feeding your family store-bought yogurt, that's okay. Maybe you want to make homemade yogurt sometimes and use store-bought sometimes. Don't make it something heavy where you always have to do it. I'm saying that right now though, have in your mind that you want to collect skills. It's not necessarily about making hard changes to your lifestyle. You might learn to make things like this, realize how easy it is, and decide to keep going that route. But you might just tuck away those skills once you've mastered them until you do have an animal in milk, at which point you'll know what to do. One last really important thing as far as food goes that you can do right now is really start analyzing who you are as a consumer. Look at the places where you are really dependent on things like convenience food. Look at your habits and your disciplines and really say, okay, are these things in line with what I want for my life? Because the thing is that if we are completely dependent on fast food, but we desire to have a farm where we grow our own food, let me tell you that once the garden starts producing, if you don't confront that fast food habit, you're not going to want to eat the stuff that's coming out of your garden. I'm saying this from experience. It's really important to bring your lifestyle choices into alignment with the desires of your heart, so that you can have the drive to do the hard work to make your dream come true, but then also so that you can enjoy it and use it when it does, or else it's not sustainable. I know a lot of people who have gotten into homesteading and farming and then given up on it within the first year or two, because the fact is it just wasn't that beneficial for them. They had aligned with it and made the choice that it was overall going to become their lifestyle. And this is something we've struggled with, completely honestly. There have been times that the food we've grown on our farm is on the point of spoiling because we have been going to nonstop, that we're eating out and we're using convenience foods. And at that point we have to say, whoa, stop. We're doing all of this work. It needs to be for something. Being honest with yourself about who you are as a consumer is a huge part of homesteading success, especially when you're first getting started. So overall, right now, wherever you are, into whatever capacity you're able to do it, start treating your kitchen like it's on a homestead. Start treating your meal plans like you're on a homestead. Start thinking seasonally. If you have the desire to someday have a garden and grow a whole lot of your own food, you'll have to really look if you're dependent on out of season foods the rest of the year. Because whenever you try to make the shift between how you currently eat and then eating from your garden, it's gonna be a really hard shift. You can alleviate that hard shift, and you can alleviate the struggle in yourself to figure out how to feed your family and how to use what you have by now going ahead and shifting those mindsets to eating seasonally, being resourceful, being able to make a meal plan on the fly based on what's available, not relying heavily on convenience foods, making things from scratch whenever you can. there are other things that these same principles really apply to. Things like cleaning products. Now, we still use some really heavily commercial cleaning products. I use antibacterial soap to wash my goat's teats, and I use some store-bought natural cleaners. However, I make a lot of our cleaners cleaning with vinegar, doing an enzyme cleaner, which I'm actually going to be doing a video with my friend Lauren to post here in the next week or so, telling you guys how to make that. And essentially the idea is the less that I need to buy at the store, the better. The more things that I can make with cheap and easy to obtain ingredients, the better. Even when it comes to cleaning my house. Now, I prefer to do things as non-toxic as possible. I'm not like super strict about that. But for me, homemade cleaners are just a cost factor. Making my cleaners at home enabled me to add essential oils into our cleaning regimen, and overall made me feel like I had a healthier and cleaner home, which is switching over from products which are either disposable or have to be quickly replaced to things that have less weight. I love cast iron. I've shared that with you guys. I've used cast iron for a lot longer than I've had a homestead, but there was a season where I went through a few different sets of non-stick pans just because with having so many kids and guests and siblings and family over, my pans got messed up. Now I've had the same set of cast iron for a good long while now. That's all I use anymore, and I don't remember the last time that I bought a pan. You're trying to lessen what you need from the outside, so it's best to go ahead and invest in things on the front end that aren't going to have to be replaced. One more thing that is a very valuable skill to have once you are actively homesteading is the ability to thrift well, because the more that you're able to save on purchases for things that you need, the less money you need to live. Thrift shopping for your clothes, for household goods, for things like furniture, these are all ways to save a lot of money. So part of really getting away from the dependency of just the mainstream market is learning to thrift and to barter, to trade with people, to trade labor for things that you need, to find things used and save money in buying them. Being resourceful is a huge homestead skill, just across the board. Being able to reuse things, to source them cheap, and to make the most out of them, to use what you have. All of these are mindsets that really make your homestead efforts go so much further. So this comes to another point of really having to look inside yourself and say, how dependent am I really on the store? Whenever I need something, how do I go about getting it? Where do I shop for this? What do I look for? Lastly, read, watch videos, get on forums, join classes. Now is the time to learn. Your homesteading venture does not start the day that you sign papers on property. And it doesn't start the day that you move in. It doesn't start whenever you first break ground on your garden or bring your first goat home. Your homestead venture, if you have the desire in your heart to become a homesteader, it started as soon as you decided that that was something that you wanted to do with your life. Right now, wherever you are, in whatever classroom, in whatever office building, in whatever apartment, in whatever suburban neighborhood, whether your days are filled with a corporate job or whether you're a soccer mom, whoever it is that you are and wherever you are, right now, start thinking of yourself as a homesteader. Not a wannabe, not a one day. Right now, if you have decided in your heart that this is something that you desire for your life, start acting like this is something that you are. Join classes. Find the Master Gardeners Division for your county. Check with your extension office. Check with your local universities. You would be amazed at how much further education there is out there for stuff like this. How many clubs and how many groups. Check into 4-H for your kids. Talk with local farmers. Go to the farmers market and strike up conversation and say, hey, do you know of any resources for people who are wanting to learn? Now, a lot of you won't be able to sign up for internships on organic farms and all of that stuff because I understand there's a lot of time commitment to that. But you absolutely can start growing your knowledge base on how to do the kinds of things that you're hoping to be able to do one day. I'm not joking. I knew so much about chickens before I had ever actually even seen one. Now, I'd seen chickens before, like whenever I was growing up, I had been around them, but I remember just becoming obsessed with the idea of owning chickens and just reading all these books and watching all these videos. And I actually went to the fair, the state fair, and everybody's excited about the rides and the fried food. And I was like, take me to the ag hall because I need to see the chickens. And when I went, I was like, they're so big. I was just completely shocked to actually be there with the chickens and be like, wow, they're so much bigger than I had in my mind. I was all about education and I knew how to take care of things. Then whenever we got chickens, as soon as issues started cropping up, I wasn't bewildered by it. I knew how to handle it already. Now I still have to Google things like daily. I'm still learning all the time. I still love to read and I learn so much from my fellow YouTubers and my farm friends on Instagram. I still learn new things all the time. However, because of the season where you are now, that season is why I've had the success that I've had, because it wasn't a waiting room, it was a classroom. It wasn't the torture of a dream that just seemed like it would never come true. Now, I did have my moments. I vividly remember crying over a book about backyard farms in the bookstore one night on a date night with Maya. But truly, the fact that on our date nights we went to the bookstore and read homesteading books is just a testament to the fact that that season was a season of so much growth and knowledge. I cannot implore you enough to turn your waiting room into a classroom. Let this be a time that you hone your skills, work on carpentry projects, and know that whenever you build small things that seem completely unconnected to having a farm, you're growing your skills that you're going to need to build fences and coops. Read whatever you can. Learn how to be really good in the kitchen. Learn how to make food without a recipe. Cooking whatever it is you're able to get a hold of. Challenge yourself. Go to the farmer's market and buy some random ingredients of stuff that is growing and in season and go home and make a meal out of it. Get off the convenience foods. Learn to thrift. Learn to forage. It's all about growing your skills right now. And whatever you do, don't give up dreaming. I really believe that right now, the call to go back to the land is on so many people's hearts for a reason. I believe that this is a good and worthy life, and it's something that we can be capable of, but it does take some work. It does take some knowledge. And truly, in order to have success, it takes the determination that you will not give up. So right now, know that in the season of desiring it more than anything, even though you're unable to make it happen, partnering with that desire and growing your skills and putting up with the waiting is building the determination in you that when it gets really hard, you won't give up. Thank you guys so much for hanging out with me today. I hope this helps you. I bless you. Until next time.